Today I will be playing what I consider to be the most terrifying FNAF games, with 5 FNAF games and each getting more scary as we eventually reach the scariest one. So with that, sit back, relax and enjoy part 3 of this series. Let's go. This first game is called A Bite at Freddy's. It's a really unique take on FNAF and gives it more of like a western cowboy look to it, and it's also pretty scary, so let's just get straight into it. We begin this game in a animatronic suit, and it appears that something has jump scared us. We fall to the ground and close our eyes. Something has attacked us. We awake in the Freddy suit, staring at what seems to be a police officer and a sheriff. And we move our head. We have become the animatronic. We turn our head toward our right and we see what seems to be Bonnie, who seems to be having the same experience as us. The cutscene stops, and we get a newsletter telling us of a new job which has been recently available. The job of a machine maintenance worker at Freddy Fazbear's Grill. Our job is pretty simple. We need to deliver food during the night and avoid any sort of confrontation with anything. And with that, we begin our shift at Fazbear's Grill. The office itself is pretty simple. We have 2 areas to look at, the area right in front of us and the area to our left. The conveyor belt starts from the kitchen, going through party room A and party room B and ending up in our office. The food is cooked by what seems to be the sheriff himself, or honestly, who knows what this thing is, but this sheriff is pretty much our phone guy. He tells us how this is going to work. The food is going to be prepared by him and then shipped or moved through the conveyor belt and arriving at our office. We need to do this multiple times throughout the night as we have multiple orders to deliver. However, during the night, the animatronics are going to activate. This means that we need to also look out for them. The first night has 2 animatronics, this being Chica and Bonnie. They start in the main stage and move across the pizzeria from there. Bonnie is the first animatronic, which I'll explain. The way Bonnie works is he will go from the main stage toward the hallway. From there, he has 2 options. Either he will go around the dining area, then moving toward the storage areas, or Bonnie can go toward the kitchen and then try and make his way inside the vent. If we see Bonnie at the kitchen going inside the vent, we need to shut it off. If we don't do this, then Bonnie will climb into the vent and make his way toward our office using the conveyor belt. The catch is, when we do this, when we shut down doors or when we use light, the power will start to load up. And if it becomes too powerful, then the whole place will shut down for a brief period of time. So we need to avoid using too much power, and this makes it so we have to be very careful when we use the door system. That's Bonnie out of the way. Let's move on to Chica. Chica will go from the main stage toward the hallway. Then Chica has a chance of going all the way down the hallway next to our office. If we see Chica in our office, we need to then stop. At this point, Chica will have a standoff against us, pretty much trying to be John Marston, and by using the toy gun in our office, we can actually blast Chica. John Marston, mother. We have to aim between her eyes and we need to try and blast that area. If we miss, then, well, she will jump scare us, and if we do end up getting her, then she will go back to a normal roaming area. Chica also has another mechanic. In Cam 7, she can try and actually get inside the vent. Again, like Bonnie, we just need to simply close the vent and this will get rid of Chica. Also with Bonnie, he has a chance of actually appearing right in front of us. If this happens, we need to shut down the power and this will get rid of Bonnie. With those 2 animatronics out of the way, this night was pretty simple. I did have a quick little mishap with Chica. When she did appear, I didn't shoot her in her middle of her eyes, which led to a quick jump scare. This took me off guard as I wasn't really expecting to mess this up, but knowing that I didn't really know what I was doing, I was kind of expecting something to go wrong. But I would eventually get through all 3 orders and complete the first night or the first course. We then get a phone call from the sheriff again, telling us that we need to fix a broken light bulb. We need to just go ahead and move the light bulb back to its original position, fixing the light bulb and allowing us to continue into the second course. This time we have Freddy to say hello to, and Freddy is pretty much similar to Bonnie, but has a different way of trying to approach us. Instead of going through the vents, which actually on Cam 6 he can try go through a vent, if Freddy does do this, then it will be pretty obvious as he will be right next to the food. Just close that vent and he will go away. Or Freddy will do something else, and that is try and go through the top of the vent. vent. This is the ventilation system at the top of the pizzeria. On cam 10, we have a pretty nice view of this system. If Freddy does appear in this camera, we need to enable the fan, and this will make it so Freddy cannot continue on forward. However, if we are too late and Freddy is already nearly at the end of the camera, if we enable the fan, then he will get his head chopped off. I don't actually have footage of this happening, but I have heard that this can happen, so here's a quick picture of it happening. This night was a little bit more challenging with the new animatronic in the mix. This night was a little harder, but eventually I would have all 3 orders collected, and this will allow me to finish the night. We get another phone call from the sheriff telling us that his hat is too big to fit inside the vent system, and that we're going to have to do the repairs for him. In the vent system, we have a kind of like a pulley system. If we push this bar toward the area in front of us, it will block all animatronics from entering the vent. The only animatronic that can jump scare us is Bonnie. So if we do see Bonnie trying to enter the vent, we need to push this system, and this will get rid of Bonnie. Our goal here is to collect 5 screws and then repair the 9 screws that are located right on the conveyor belt. And if we see Bonnie, we just need to use the thing in front of us to block him off. This section was pretty simple. I would eventually be able to repair all the bolts, and I was able to then exit this conveyor belt. After this, we would have the 3rd course to deal with, and this time we have Foxy to say hello to. Foxy will begin in the Pirate Cove. He is actually quite different to the other animatronics. Foxy will make his way toward the backstage, where he will try and deactivate the video control panel. If Foxy does end up leaning toward the control panel, we need to go ahead and refresh the cameras. This should prevent Foxy from turning off the power, allowing us to not get jump scared. However, if we are too late and Foxy is already on the video control panel, then the power system will turn off, making it that we can't go on our cameras. This night was pretty difficult. The whole game was pretty much all there. The animatronics, every single one of them were out and about. I had to really pay attention to every single movement the animatronics were making. A mishap could lead to a jump scare, so I had to be very much on the ball here and making sure I was getting rid of all the threats. With enough luck, I would beat this night, and then the whole thing came to an end. We had to make our way toward the dining room, as the sheriff wants to give us a little present for going through the courses. He gives us a nice little buffet which we dig into. However, something doesn't seem right. To our right, we see what seems to be an unused animatronic beginning to approach us, and then we have the option to play the final course. Moving on to the final course, we have a few new things to look out for. First of all, we have a new event which the game calls the Bite. This event happened some time back, and essentially a kid went up to Fredbear and bit his face off, kind of like the complete opposite of what happened in the original Bite of 87. After this point, Fredbear wasn't used much, and he kind of just sat in his area, not really affecting the customers. The staff often referred to Fredbear as Threadbear, as Fredbear wasn't really being used much, so they just called it Threadbear. Furthermore, there's a new mechanic with the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt can actually get stuck now, so if the conveyor belt does get stuck, we're going to need to lift the door. This means that as food is preparing, it will take longer for the food to come out. So essentially, we need to avoid this at all cost. We need to make sure that if there's any sort of connection areas with the camera system, we need to repair that as soon as possible. Because if we don't, then again, the power shuts off. This night was actually quite hard. It was quite difficult dealing with 5 animatronics. 4 was already making things really hard, and just adding another one just made the game extremely difficult. Most times I'd honestly just lose track of an animatronic, and I'd have to just hope that the animatronic hadn't gotten too close to me. Most times I found that Bonnie was the most difficult. Making sure that Bonnie wasn't right in front of me was a little bit hard at first, but I soon realized that there's actually an audio cue when Bonnie enters the office, and this helped me quite a bit. Fredbear is pretty similar to Freddy. The way Threadbear works is he has all of the animatronics mechanics. That means he can go into the conveyor belt, actually stalling it if he ends up in the conveyor belt. He can also end up in the vent system above us, and also he can turn off the power just like Foxy. And if you imagine, this makes Threadbear by far the most annoying threat in the whole night. All the animatronics combined makes this night a very challenging experience. There's a lot of ways which you can actually miss the animatronics, and most times I would have them enter the conveyor belt and this would make them appear at my office. Furthermore, sometimes I would just completely miss an animatronic and have no idea where they are. So yeah, safe to say this night was quite a challenge. After 30 minutes, I would finally collect the last order, putting an end to this game. The game cuts and we get a cutscene of what seems to be Freddy trying to escape the pizzeria. After this, a newspaper appears on a table telling us that the actual animatronics have been found missing. With Freddy looking like an actual Chad, he appears to have left the animatronic business. Who knows what Freddy is going to be up to next, but this seems to be the end of a Bite at Freddy's. We also have an extra menu to look at with all the animatronic designs. We also get some development of the game. This has some early concepts of the animatronics and some really cool looking designs. And with that brings an end to this game. A Bite at Freddy's is honestly one of those games that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it actually makes the game a lot more enjoyable as the lore isn't really too hard to get into. It also has a lot of charm and is by far one of the most unique FNAF games I've played ever. Anyways, let's move on to the next game. This next game is called Freddy's Reanimated. It is one of the most realistic games I've ever seen in the FNAF niche, so let's just get into it. Us main character Mike Smith is the only worker at Freddy's, and during our night shift the animatronics come to life, something I'm sure you've heard of before. The graphics themselves are realistic. I mean, this game looks like it can just actually be real life. In the office, we don't really have access to much. The only things we have access to are the cameras. Furthermore, we have access to a window blind, and that's it. So safe to say, our survival chances aren't really that high. But anyways, how did the animatronics work? Well, let's just start off with Bonnie, who is by far the most aggressive of the animatronics. Bonnie will eventually move from the front stage and he will eventually make his way throughout the pizzeria. This game's camera system works kind of like Graveyard Shift at Freddy's. However, the main distinction is they can move from any camera and you don't have a shitty Wi-Fi router that barely works. Bonnie will eventually make his way toward the Cam 8, which is the camera right outside our office. If Bonnie gets toward this camera, we need to really pay attention as now he can actually take us out. Because in this camera, he will be right outside our door, which means he is really close to us. And in this camera, it will take around 20 to 30 seconds before we actually see Bonnie at the window. If we see Bonnie at this window, we need to close the curtain, because if we're not fast enough, then Bonnie will smash through the door and jump scare us. The first few goes of this game, I found this out the hard way as Bonnie and Chica would just be jump scaring me for no reason. This was also due to me not knowing anything about the mechanics. If Bonnie is outside and we close the curtain, it will take around a few seconds for him to leave. We actually need to hear out for his footsteps and this will indicate that he's left our office. Let's move on to Chica, who is pretty unique in this game. Chica will go from camera to camera and she will eventually make her way to either Cam 4 or Cam 2. In these two cameras, there's a chance that she can just go straight toward the office, either through the exit door or just either through the kitchen. And she will go straight to your office. If you don't flash the room with the beacon, she will just go to your office like that and jump scare you. During these two cameras, we need to make sure that we're waiting until she's about to leave. And this is really obvious as in the top right, we will see a danger icon indicating that she's about to leave. At this point, we need to flash the room, and if we do this correctly, she should just leave. But if we don't flash the room, then she will go straight to our office and jump scare us, putting an end to our night. This took me a while to learn as the mechanics aren't really obvious to begin with, but eventually I would get the rhythm of the night and this would allow me to get further into it. However, I was still struggling tremendously as the night itself is extremely long, and eventually I would get to 3 AM and some music would begin to play. This music is just to make the night more tenseful, kind of like Graveyard Shifts, and this doesn't really help when you're already stressing out a lot, so I was now at a disadvantage. What I would do is pretty much I would just keep my camera roughly on Cam 8, occasionally checking if Bonnie would appear next to my office. If I saw Bonnie at this door, I would count to 30 seconds. If I don't know when Bonnie got toward the door, I would just count from 25 and keep checking the window. But if I saw Bonnie got to the door and I know when exactly he got there, I could count down from 30 as this is roughly where Bonnie will appear. After this, I would go checking for Chica as she was pretty much a massive threat in this night. If I wasn't checking Cam 2 or Cam 4, there's a high chance she could be already at my office, so this was pretty hard to deal with. And as we got later and later into the night, like the 4 to 5 AM mark, this was really hard to deal with, as both animatronics were really aggressive by this point and would appear at my office occasionally. Like there were some points where I didn't really know where Bonnie was. I would just be looking at the window hoping that he appeared so I could go check on Chica. Eventually, I would complete this night and this would put an end to Freddy's Reanimated. However, this wasn't the case and the office itself lost full power. And we then had to say hi the Freddy, who finally made an appearance in this game. We hear an animatronic come closer and closer to us, his footsteps becoming louder with each step. And eventually it sounds as if he's right next to us, like breathing in front of us. And eventually, we would get jump scared by Freddy with a really quick and terrifying jump scare. We then get a really weird and like obstruct little visual here of some mountains, and then it appears that us, Mike Smith, have been found missing. Nothing is known about our disappearance, but one thing is clear, that we were found missing at Fazbear's Pizza, which means that anything could have happened to us. And that about puts an end to Freddy's Reanimated, a really awesome demo that honestly is a really fresh and really awesome take of the original FNAF. But with that, that's about it for this game. Let's move on to our next one. This next game is called Five Nights at Freddy's Fears of the Mind. This game is terrifying, so let's just get straight into it. So we start this game off with a really terrifying cutscene of all the animatronics in our bedroom. Yes, they look absolutely disgustingly terrifying, so that's gonna be fun. And if you can't tell, yes, this is a FNAF 4 remake. Moving into the game, we have a little sketchbook which kind of gives us a little hint on what to expect. Us, the main character, Andrew Brown, has been kind of noticing some animatronics as of late. We've been writing these encounters down in our notebook. This kind of acts as the main tutorial, giving us a clue on how to deal with the oncoming animatronics. Also a pretty cool reference to Bonnie with what's the Wi-Fi password. I don't know, I just thought that was pretty cool. So we hop into the game and we see what seems to be a really secluded room. The red sky mixed with the very tall forest makes for a really terrifying but immersive environment. We also have a storage system, and how this works is throughout the bedroom there's going to be batteries. The placement of the batteries can vary. Some can be on your bed, some can be next to your TV, but anyways, there's batteries, and if we collect them we can put them into the chest. Wouldn't you know it, but Chica actually likes batteries and will actually go ahead and steal your batteries if you let her do so. How Chica works is that in the window in front of you, occasionally Chica may swing on by. Chica is very much like Foxy from FNAF 1, you just have to keep an eye on her. She has a set move pattern and will eventually get closer and closer to the window. So to deal with her, make sure you are constantly checking the window for her arrival. Also, I found that this animation is absolutely terrifying. When I first got this in game, I screamed a bit. And of course, if you let Chica go too close toward your bedroom, she will actually enter the bedroom and take your batteries. Pretty terrifying. Next is Bonnie. With Bonnie, on the right side of your bedroom, there's a door. This door leads to the hallway, and we get a really cool picture of, I guess, a bald dude. But nonetheless, Bonnie will eventually make his way toward this hallway. If you see Bonnie, you need to close the door and lock it. When I first encountered Bonnie, I kept dying to him because I didn't know you actually have to lock the door. I thought that you just had to close it, but you need to actually press the lock. And I'm not even gonna call these animatronics, they're just nightmare fuel, to be honest. So this thing is terrifying. If Bonnie does wander too close toward the door, you can actually hear his breathing. So it's pretty much like his FNAF 4 counterpart, just a little bit more terrifying in the overall design. And if you use your flashlight and Bonnie's there, obviously you get jump scared. Next is Freddy. How Freddy works is behind you on your bed, you will see a plushie. Eventually, if you let this plushie just move by itself, and this can happen if you are going around the bedroom doing other activities, the plushie will eventually move. If you see the plushie's eyes begin to glow red, and if you see it right next to you, you need to use your flashlight on it. So pretty much like the Freddles from FNAF 4, but this time it's only one of them. And the other way Freddy can kill you is in your room there's a TV. Sometimes the TV can turn on randomly and display a picture of Fredbear, and if you don't turn this off fast enough, you will get jump scared. With all the mechanics out of the way, the first night went pretty rough. This took me a while to beat. The game is pretty weird because first of all, the animatronics don't actually become active until 3 AM. So you can pretty much just go AFK for the first 3 hours of the whole night and not even see an animatronic. But once 3 AM hits, the animatronics go into like search mode and they do not stop. Like, this felt more like a night 5 compared to a night 1, but nonetheless, this night went by pretty smoothly, in that it took me over 40 minutes, but eventually we did beat the night. Moving on to night 2, we actually get a option if we want to do the plush trap mode, and this is exactly like FNAF 4. it's the exact same. But Plushtrap is a little different. He looks a lot bigger and looks a lot more terrifying. And the room itself looks abandoned. It honestly feels like we're in a room we shouldn't be in. But I'm sure most of you know how this works. If you don't, basically you have to flash the Plushtrap when he's on the X in front of you. If you don't do this, then he jump scares you. I actually got this on my first go, and this allowed me to skip 2 hours in the next night. But this really wasn't that helpful, as I was now in the thick of the night, as this night starts at 2 AM. So basically, as soon as I spawned, all the animatronics hunted me down and killed me within an instant. But as I said before, the animatronics are insane, so this wasn't the best. My tactic was pretty simple. I will start at Bonnie and then move to Chica and then move to Freddy. This gave me enough time to check on all the animatronics. However, sometimes I would literally get to Bonnie exactly before he's going to jump scare me. You can tell this as before Bonnie does jump scare you, there will be flickering lights, and just like the normal FNAF 4, if this happens, then you need to check on the animatronic as soon as possible. This night would eventually be beaten, and we would move into night 3, the final night of the demo, or I think it is. I haven't actually beaten it because, spoiler alert, it's impossible. This night begins at 1 AM and it is insanely hard. Like, the animatronics feel like they're in night 7 mode, like max difficulty mode. Every second you get is pretty much met with an animatronic. And also Foxy is now awake and he is pretty annoying. In your closet next to your bed, Foxy will occasionally spawn, and if you see his hook or if you see the whole animatronic, you need to close the cupboard. But pretty much, if you don't know already, the animatronics spawn really fast. So by the time you check all the animatronics, one would have already snuck up and killed you. I tried attempting this night multiple times, and each time I would be killed by Bonnie because I would just not make it toward the door. I was playing the night for around 30 minutes to an hour and I just couldn't beat it, so I'm sorry to say, but I'm going to have to leave it at that. This game is honestly looking to be one of the most unique and exciting FNAF fan games we've had in a while. The design of the animatronics mixed with the gameplay is really promising, and I can't wait to see what else is in store for this game. But anyways, let's move on to the next one. This next game is called the Fredbear Archives. It is a free roam FNAF experience with multiple endings, so without further ado, let's get into it. We begin this game in our car, driving toward an unknown destination. A radio is heard giving us a little bit of information on Fredbear and friends and what's going on there. It appears that the new animatronics seem more robotic than the original, more animated ones, and this has caused a lot of people to stop going to Fredbear and friends. So we, an investigator, I assume, go toward this place and investigate what's going on. We arrive at the warehouse and the place seems dead and abandoned. Going into the facility, it seems that the hallways seem to have some sort of power still running the place, which gives the place a little bit of hope and optimism. But as we travel through the facility, we see a little bit of, let's just say, unusual activity. The first sign of this is as we are walking, an empty can rolls across the hallway. Could this have been a rat or perhaps something a little bit more dangerous? Well, at this point of time, we can't really decide. So we go toward the main office and we travel through this area and wrap around the back to the storage room. We see a window. You know, the first thing we do when we see a power box is turn it on. So we go ahead and do that. It appears that not only are we alone, but we are being stalked by the animatronics as Lefty delivers a very sharp jump scare. This isn't the end, however. We wake up at the main office area. We are given a quick little message saying that we are not alone and we need to escape as quick as possible. So without wasting any time, we go ahead and begin our night. To beat this game, we need to go ahead and escape. To escape, we are going to need multiple items. These items can be found throughout the facility, and well, the items are random for each game. So pretty much we need to go ahead and start looking for stuff as soon as possible. However, as we go ahead and find these items, we come to learn that the animatronics are now active. The following animatronics are the Rockstar animatronics. We have Rockstar Chica, Rockstar Freddy, Lefty, and Rockstar Bonnie. So overall, 4 animatronics are hunting us down. The first animatronic is Rockstar Bonnie, by far the most prominent animatronic. As we walk across the facility, Rockstar Bonnie will track us down. However, if we stare at the animatronic, it won't won't move. So essentially kind of like a weeping angel, if we move, it follows us, if we stare at it, it stays still. The next animatronic is Lefty. Lefty will patrol the facility at a very slow pace. However, if Lefty does see us, then we are pretty much screwed. The animatronic itself is extremely fast, so making an escape is pretty much impossible. The only way to counter Lefty is to find a locker, and to be honest, most times you won't even be able to get to the locker before Lefty gets toward you. Moving on to Rockstar Freddy. Rockstar Freddy will move across the facility at extremely fast pace. However, it actually can't jump scare you. All Rockstar Freddy will do is, if it does detect you, it will alert Lefty, and then, well, that will bring a quick end to your night if you're nowhere near a locker. Rockstar Chica is a little bit later on, so let's just get straight into the game itself. Immediately, it strikes me that this game is going to be quite hard. There's not really anything giving you any direction, you kind of just have to find things out on your own, and this leads to a lot of encounters with the animatronics. I find myself immediately trapped in a corner with Lefty, so already off to a great start. I find some boxes and hide behind them, and this makes me narrowly avoid this encounter. In this storage room, I also find a button on the wall. By pressing this button, I hear a noise, and immediately I realize that something has opened in this facility. So in search of this little opening, I find another door, which then leads to a storage room. Another one, I know, there's a lot of them. This control room, more so than a storage room, is controlled by Rockstar Chica. Finally, we're going to get into how she works. Rockstar Chica roams this area, and she goes in one direction from the beginning of this area all the way to the doorway which we just entered. If she sees us at any point, she will track us down and jump scare us in mere moments. The only way to really avoid her is by going right behind her and slowly going through this area, or by just hiding in areas around this place and hoping that she doesn't detect you. This area is by far one of the trickiest areas in the game, because if Chica detects you at all, well, then your game will end very quickly. My first experience in this area, well, it didn't really last long. I was just running headlessly in this area, just looking for anything I could find. I did find some buttons, but the button that I found, well, let's just say Chica also found me. And then in around 2 seconds, I was jump scared. However, I did find a ladder, and this door is actually the door which opened when I pressed that button before. It was now time to find a way through this labyrinth. So I go ahead and go back to this area and try and tackle this maze. I did find a path to get around her. By going to the room with the ladder, I was able to hide in there and wait for Chica to go all the way around. By doing this, I can sneak up behind her, go across the maze, and make my way toward the other side. There's 3 overall buttons in this area. One was the button we found before, the other one is in the middle of the maze, and the last one is at the very end. By pressing all 3 buttons, a area will open, and this will house one of 2 items, either the hammer or the screwdriver. Now it was time to get back toward the other side of this maze. However, Chica is now going toward us, so we have to go inside the locker. However, in this playthrough, as you can see, let's just say I wasn't really checking on Bonnie and I kinda got stuck. So with no way of escaping, I just succumbed to the inevitable, and let's just say it didn't end well. I tried this again, and this time I was a lot more successful in leaving this place. By keeping tabs on Bonnie, I was able to keep him away from this area, so I was able to escape Chica and finally exit this absolutely brutal maze. I then had to find the storage key, so by roaming across the facility, I would eventually find the storage key. This allowed me to enter the storage room, which housed the other item which I needed, this being the lockpick. With both items, I then made a last dash toward the exit door. However, I then was met with 2 options. Either go through the vent, which I didn't have the items necessary to even go through it, so the only option here was to go through the exit door. Going through this door, we then end up in the area where we were before. However, now everything is boarded off, and if we go toward the other door, which we need to actually escape in, the door is blocked off. So the only way to escape is through the area in which we just came in. However, the door slowly opens, and something is pretty off-putting about it. We appear to be trapped, and then this happens. Oh my gosh. We had an escape, and this is essentially the bad ending of the game. But I wasn't done yet. I needed to get the good ending. Hopping into a new playthrough, we need to now collect every single item. The items which I had missed was the screwdriver and the 3 ladder pieces. So it was now time to find these items. By going through the facility, I would be able to find the first ladder piece in the door we opened before in the control room. Next, by grabbing the hammer, we could now open the second ladder piece. There's a box around the facility, which is pretty obvious. You can see it's a box with an item inside of it. If you smash open the box, you will see the second ladder piece will be in the box. And lastly, we need to actually grab a forklift control key. This key can be found in the very same room where you can find the second key item, where in this game it was the lockpick. In the room next to this item, we found the forklift key. By activating the forklift, it will go straight toward this wall and it will drop the last piece for the ladder. With all three ladder pieces, we now need to make our escape. So by going to the door which we opened before, this time we can actually select the vent option. This option allows us to go through the vents, but something is actually inside these vents that we need to watch out for. At this point, we just need to keep on going through the vents, but eventually we find that Foxy is also in the vents with us. Foxy is pretty simple. He will just kind of make his way through the vents occasionally, and if you do see him, just don't continue on forward. Just wait until he passes and then continue your path. I had a few encounters with Foxy, but eventually he just kind of left me alone and I was just kind of left to find my way throughout this maze. The vents themselves are quite confusing as there's not really a direction to go. You just kind of have to guess where you're going. But by just continuing on forward for a long period of time, I eventually found a hatch. By going down the hatch, we had escaped the building. So by entering our car and driving off, we have escaped the Fredbear Archives. And by doing this, we also get the good ending, finally solidifying that we have in fact successfully escaped the building. However, this was not the end, as it appears that in our apartment, someone is knocking at our door. We were writing down a rough analysis of the events which had happened to us. However, after hearing the knock, we stop what we're doing and go toward the door. I know it's gonna be Freddy Fazbear. And Freddy Fazbear. By opening the door, it appears that someone is there wanting us, and with that the game ends. The Fredbear Archives is one of those games which honestly doesn't have enough recognition. It is actually a fantastic FNAF experience, one that I honestly never heard of up to this point. But with that, that's about it for this game. Let's move on to the next one. This next game is Final Nights 4, one of the most iconic FNAF games ever made. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So starting off, a cutscene plays. Us, the main character Henry, are a paranormal investigator. We've been fixated on the case of Fazbear's Pizza, the investigation which has led us down a path of complete isolation. We needed to know more about what happened, so in a last-ditch effort, we made our way toward the pizzeria. But before this, an interesting letter came to our door, a letter from an unknown person. The letter states that whoever this person is waiting for us in the pizzeria. So that night, we pack our bags and make our way toward the pizzeria. We get to the pizzeria and the game starts. This game has two sections. The first sections are the post-night sections. What you're seeing here is a post-night section. How this works is pretty much we need to complete a task. Our first task is to investigate the pizzeria. So by going to our trunk and grabbing our items, we go ahead and make our way inside the pizzeria. The place seems abandoned. And not only this, it seems that something has been left here. So we investigate. We find a lock and we also find a hatchet. On the office chair, we find a date 1973. By inputting this code onto the key lock, the door opens. And by using the axe we found before, we can hack down the wood planks and make our way inside this little room. We find a button, and by pressing this button, it seems that the gas that was leaking before has stopped. This allows us to progress further into the building, and we find ourselves inside our first minigame. We need to play a game with the Puppet Master. How this works is we have a flashlight. The flashlight has a battery, but to recharge, we need to look down and wind on the battery, which gives us more power. The main task ahead of us is we need to find the puppet. The puppet has two faces. One is the normal puppet, and the other is the hand puppet. The hand puppet is pretty simple. We need to use our flashlight on it, or if it's behind the curtain, we need to pull the curtain and look at it. And the puppet is the complete opposite. If we see the puppet, we have to just continue to stare at it. If we pull the curtain with the puppet in there, it will jump scare us. So we need to make sure that we can distinguish which one is which. This took me a while to figure out, as the game doesn't really give you much of a hint of what to do, but eventually I would work this part out. And mind you, this is a post-night section. This isn't even the main game. But with that, I would would eventually complete the night and would absolutely be startled by a puppet jump scare. This took me completely off guard, but nonetheless, we completed this section and move on to the first night. Finally, we get into the main gameplay, and it's very complex like the post-night section. So immediately we get a phone call by William. He tells us about the pizzeria and also about how the animatronics work. He warns us though that this place isn't really the best place to be at, but nonetheless he knows that we want to find out whatever's been happening here. So he gives us a little hint on how these animatronics work. Firstly, we have Fredbear. Fredbear begins in the main stage with Spring Bonnie. At this point, Fredbear will remain here until he begins to move. At this point, you need to use the alarm, which we can find on the left side of our screen, and by pressing this button, Fredbear will be attracted to different locations around the pizzeria. You have to make sure first of all that the location is near to Fredbear. If the location is too far to where Fredbear is, he won't actually move. We need to get Fredbear toward the party room 1. Pretty simple on the surface. We need to just continue to just lure him toward it. And once Fredbear gets here, we need to use the alarm next to our office. So let's move on to Spring Bonnie, who's a lot more simple than Fredbear. Spring Bonnie will begin in the main stage like Fredbear. However, all he will do is make his way naturally toward your office. And if he gets toward your office, you will actually see him walk up to you, and in a terrifying way, you need to stop whatever you're doing and stare at it. If you move at all during this section, you will die. So make sure you don't move, and it's pretty terrifying. With the mechanics out of the way, let's get into the night itself. This night was hard. I didn't know what I was doing because no matter what I did, Fredbear would jump scare me. He would turn off the power and jump scare me. I was even waiting for Fredbear to get to party room 1, but no matter what, Fredbear just kept turning off the power. So what was I doing wrong? Well, in actual reality, Fredbear works a lot more different than what we thought. Fredbear, if you get him toward too many rooms, he just doesn't listen to you. The key to Fredbear is you have to get him toward the party room 1, but you need to make sure you're not going to too many rooms. So if I just keep spamming the alarm to like 4 different rooms, he will just turn off the power. However, if I use only 2 of the locations on the map, then he will be more likely to go toward my office. So by going on YouTube and searching up how to beat the night 1 of Final Nights 4, yes, I searched this up, you need to get Fredbear to the puppet corner and then get him toward the party room 1. So by only using 2 rooms, Fredbear would now be more likely to go toward the hallway and, you know, not turning off my power and jump scaring me. We actually got through night 1, and yes, this took me nearly 40 minutes to do, but let's move on. We now move into a new post-night section, and this one is located in a house in the middle of nowhere. This house seemingly belongs to William, but let's get into that a bit later. We arrive on the outside of the premises, and we now need to get toward the back shed. In the back shed, we find a cleaver, just a knife, pretty much. And with this knife, we can now make our way into the premises. So by going to the front and by cutting off the power supply, we actually make our way into the house. We then peek through the front door. However, Freddy didn't like this at all and proceeds to actually knock our head in. And we then go unconscious and we are dragged into the house. I'm not too sure what Freddy really wanted from us, but he knocked us out, so yeah. With us in the house, we have to find a way out. So obviously, the first thing we do is we find a valve. We also find that the animatronics actually house some like gas, laughing gas, some like Joker shit, and this is what William supposedly used in the pizzeria, so pretty insane stuff. But moving on, we grab a crank and we crank this Fredbear head, which then decides to explode. However, Chica is now chasing us, so I guess that wasn't a good idea. With Chica on our backs, we have to go straight toward the staircase and hide behind this debris. Chica then completely loses sight of us, although we were literally being chased on the side of the debris. So I'm not sure how Chica really stuffed this up, but I guess she did. And moving on to our next post-night game. This one is pretty confusing like the last one. Essentially, we need to keep our light on Chica. If we don't do this, she will eventually make a way toward us. And on the other side of this room is Freddy. So we're pretty much cornered. Thankfully, Freddy isn't really the most aggressive. Freddy will move slowly toward us, and when he gets right behind us, we need to grab the crank and crank his head in. I guess. I don't know what this really does. And we need to repeat this multiple times, as eventually we explode Freddy. He explodes. And hopefully you've been keeping track of Chica, as she moves pretty fast. So if you've been doing that correctly, Chica shouldn't be... You shouldn't be dead. But however, she will be right at your door, so you need to go behind the door and wait till she goes in the room. And then you have to go right up behind her and crank her head in. So by cranking the animatronics, we escape the house. And then the puppet is late for like trick-or-treating or some shit and then goes, "What are you doing here?" And then we just burn the heads. I don't know. So let's move into night 2. And now we have the new animatronic, the Puppet Master. The Puppet Master likes attention, just like Jake Paul. And we need to keep our eye on her. So if she moves, we need to make sure we're tracking her camera. She will start in the puppet corner, no surprise, and she'll eventually make her way around the pizzeria. And each time she moves, we have to keep track of her. If we leave her for too long without checking her, she will kill us. There's also a pretty cool camera. If you look at the backstage camera and if the puppet's in that room, she actually stops and stares at the lifeless animatronic. I don't know, I found it quite cool and it might be lore related. You know what? No, it is lore related. Anyways, this night was exactly like night 1, however a little bit more difficult. But we eventually got through the night and made it through to the next night. This post-night section was pretty easy. We pretty much just go inside the pizzeria like the first one, and we then get knocked out by Freddy again. And what's with Freddy knocking us out? He just doesn't like us. Anyways, this Freddy looks like he's been through some stuff. We have a little conversation with him, which leads to nothing because eventually he just disappears and we move into the next night. This night we have a new animatronic, this being Proto Spring Bonnie. Proto Spring Bonnie is actually quite simple. If we see Proto Spring Bonnie, we need to see if he stops. If he doesn't move and stays still for a reasonable amount of time, we need to use the anti-air thing. I'm just going to call it fart juice. So by using the fart juice, Spring or anti-Spring Bonnie, I don't know what the f his name is, he moves and eventually he makes his way toward our office. However, if we've done everything correctly, he should just go inside the vent. If you haven't been giving Proto Spring Bonnie his fart juice, then he might kill you. But if you do this correctly, he should go inside the vent and continue to repeat this cycle. And the rest is pretty much the same. So I got through the night pretty fast actually. So far, night 1 was the most difficult. So let's just move on. We then move into a hospital and here we need to find a way inside it. So by sneaking inside the sewers and by going and finding a really cool puzzle that definitely didn't take me some time to complete, we were able to open the garage door. I don't know how this works, but I guess there was a power outage or something and maybe this turned on the power. Enough yapping, we go to the garage door and make our way inside the main area of the hospital. This place seems abandoned, no surprise there. And our next task is to just find a way to the top of the hospital. However, during this section, a entity will track us down. I don't know what this entity is called, but let's just call it Puppet 2. How Puppet 2 works is if you see a icon in your top right, you need to move. Yeah, pretty simple. We eventually find a keypad, and by entering the correct code, we then find a screwdriver. With this screwdriver, we go back toward the elevator and we find a circuit box, and by just yanking the thing open, we have to input a code. This is quite simple. If you see changing symbol, you press on changing symbol. Not going to go into too much detail there, but eventually we go toward the first floor and we make our way toward a projector. We turn off the projector, go back outside this room, go around this place, and we go inside another room. A lot of rooms, I know, but this room houses a chica. This chica just wants to play a game of peekaboo, so we go ahead and play it. If you see a chica move, you have to use your flashlight, and eventually multiple chicas will spawn in, so you have to always keep an eye on which one is the correct one. After this, we then go inside a hospital room. This room is another post-night section. How this one works is we have to keep flashing these animatronics. The following animatronics are Mangle, Balloon Boy, the Freddy plushies, and something else. I don't know what this is. With Mangle, just don't let her move too much, and with Balloon Boy, you have to wait until his hands start to open up. If his hands are closed and you use your flashlight, he will jump scare you. And the last animatronic or thing is Reaper Puppet. Reaper Puppet is actually pretty simple. If you see him spawn in, and this is pretty simple, as in your top right, you will see the Reaper Puppet icon. If you see that, just turn the light off by using this light switch. This is pretty simple, just survive like 3 to 4 minutes and eventually you should complete the night. Alright, so moving into night 4, we have a new animatronic to say hello to, this being Proto Freddy. How Proto Freddy works is he's kind of similar to Proto Spring Bonnie. We will first see him in the backstage and he will eventually make his way toward the vents. And yes, the vents are finally being used in this game. They kind of just existed, but now we actually have to pay attention to them. Eventually, Proto Freddy will go to the vent on top of us. And yes, there actually is a vent up here. I didn't even know this, but anyways, when Proto Freddy gets here, you will see him in his full glory. At this point, he will go closer and closer towards you, eventually being right up against the vent. If we see Freddy in this position, we need to close the vent vent door. At this point, Freddy gets kind of mad that you did this to him, so he will get out of the vent and go toward the hallway to your right. If you see Freddy in the hallway or if you hear him, you need to stop what you're doing and stare at him. You can't go on cameras at this point, so all you can do is just stare at Freddy. With Freddy's mechanics out of the way, the night itself was a little hard to adjust to. With all the new animatronics to say hello to, it actually made characters like normal Freddy a lot harder to deal with. Like a lot of times my power would just shut off because I haven't been actively checking on normal Freddy. And even then at times I had to use the alarm next to my office, and with all the animatronics at my office, this wasn't really the best idea. But I soon realized that with the proto animatronics, you can still use the alarm next to the office. So after learning this, the whole night became a lot more easier to deal with. With a few attempts later, I would have a really successful run. I would be getting all the animatronics just out of the way, but something happened at 5 AM that really took me off guard. I was really paying attention to the proto animatronics that I completely just forgot about the puppet. So at 5 AM, I actually learned that the puppet doesn't have a jump scare. All it does is with this little pen puppet, it uses it on the camera, and then you can't use it for the rest of the night. So at 5 AM, I had no camera, I had nothing. I just had to really just lock in and survive. The night was getting quite hard. All the animatronics were appearing at my office, but I thought and I believed that I could beat the night. And with enough luck, I would eventually successfully beat night 4. We then returned to the post-night section where this Freddy is still talking to us. I just started yapping to it, you know, saying some random stuff, and then as soon as you knew it, night 5 began. And this night completely turns everything on its head. We have a new animatronic to say hello to, but before the night even starts, we get a talk from William. It pretty much says that if we survive the night, then we're pretty lucky, so not going off to a great start. The game really kicks into overdrive, and we have a new animatronic, which I don't really know what this thing is called, but we're gonna call it Glitchman. With Glitchman, if we look on our camera system, eventually some red alarm like icons will appear. In any room in which we see this alarm, we need to use our actual alarm. And if we do this correctly, Glitchman should go away. He spawns in a lot. Like this night was very active. You would get an animatronic spawn each like 20 seconds. And another ability of Glitchman is he can appear right in your office toward your right. And if you see this, you just need to use the alarm in the hallway. This night was honestly not as bad as night 4. The beginning of the night was a little hard to get used to, and sometimes I noticed that I wouldn't be seeing the alarm because the alarm can happen in the same room in which you checked your last camera. And if you don't know, in this game, if you're on a room selected, it just has a white really blinding icon and you can't see the alarm. So sometimes I just had to use the alarm twice just to get rid of the threat. Also a bit random, but literally on night 4 I realized I was recording at 30 FPS, so I'm sorry if the gameplay up to night 4 looked like doo-doo. Don't worry, I've been using 60 FPS ever since night 4, so sorry about that. With enough attempts later, I would eventually beat the night, completing the events of Final Night 4. However, we weren't done yet. We had to now get out of the building. So by going through the hallways which we were defending for 5 nights, we would eventually find ourselves in a random room. And we would get knocked out again for the 5th time, is it? This game? Eventually we got knocked out and turned into one of the animatronics. This was the bad ending. Of course, I got the bad ending. I just can't seem to get a good one. In any game I play, to be honest. This was because I hadn't answered the questions from that Freddy thing before correctly. So we ended up just getting sent here for eternity, pretty much. This game is one of the most iconic fan games ever made, and it's honestly a scary and amazing experience at the same time. If you haven't played this game, I'd highly recommend doing so. It is so fun. There is some questionable things like the Minecraft crafting system, but honestly, I had a blast playing it. And with that, that's about it for this video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please consider smashing a like. And if you are brand new here and never want to miss out on a future upload, then please consider subscribing as well. On screen here are the previous 2 parts of this series, so you know what to do. If you haven't seen them, go ahead and check them out. But anyways, until next time, take it easy and goodbye.